So once again, I want to thank everybody joining us on our
Yeah,
podcast today. And
you bet.
and we're really super excited to have Bob Spiel with us. And now, Bob, we are now just really beginning to know each other now for one of the first times because we have a mutual client together. We probably have some other mutual experiences in the past since we're in the same industry. But Bob, I do know you are the CEO of Spiel Consulting, so I'd like to know a little bit more about how you got that started, and
Sure.
then also tell us a little bit more about Dentist Partner Pros.
Thanks, Eric, very much. It's great to be with you, and you and Kelly. Thank you so much for the chance to show up with you. Let me just tell you a little bit about me and kind of my journey into dentistry and what my two businesses focus on. I once heard it in a meeting, there are two paths to get into dentistry. One is dentistry finds you, or you find it. And frankly, for me, I think it was more that dentistry found me. Um, Prior to getting into the dental industry and space, I was a hospital and surgical center CEO about 25 years ago. Got an MBA back in the 80s, and once those two CEO gigs ended, I was consulting in medicine, and I was good at it, but I found that it lacked a heart. Okay. And that's where dentistry found me through a friend of a friend who's a dental consultant wanted to sell his business. I didn't buy his business, but he mentored me for a couple of years and really taught me how to see the whole game, as he called it, the game of dentistry. Okay. Because the way that I have discovered it over the years, and this is where it kind of comes into what I do as a consultant. School teaches dentists how to throw, kick, or shoot the ball, but it doesn't teach them how to play the game. And playing the game is exactly what will make them achieve all the goals that they had when they first got into school to begin with. Life doesn't even teach them how to play the game. They can kind of pick up certain things along the way and have what I call a sandlot practice. But if you really want to learn how to be a professional, play dentistry professionally, then that's what I specialize in, is to be able to teach the systems, the culture, the communication, all those different things that begin to turn into what is called the hidden game of dentistry. Got a good friend of mine, Catherine Itel Belt, who once described, what do you do? And she said, I teach dentists the hidden game of dentistry that no one else understands. But once you understand it yourself, you're unbeatable. That's what I do on, one side of my ledger. The other piece is a few years ago, I launched off of Spill Consulting, a company called Dentist Partner Pros. And what we do there is we hire partner quality associate dentists because we've developed a specialty in it that has a fantastic track record of success as opposed to the industry's record of failure with it. But it's also really fun to get the exact right person in a growing private practice or transitioning private practice that needs to fit the culture, needs to be somebody that everybody can really get behind and support, and then to see how they become a part of the entire success of the practice. It's really fun
Mm.
and exciting. So those are the two things that I do.
I,
Those are
I,
those are my day jobs.
okay, and then what are the after hours things?
Well, my
What do you love to do?
yeah,
You're up in Utah, right?
I am up in Utah. Yes,
So
sir. Yeah,
skiing, mountain
love
bike
to
riding,
ski, love to
running.
boat. Yeah, love to hike.
Yeah,
But probably the biggest, well, I don't want to say the biggest, but one of my non-day jobs, frankly, is also I am the co-host for a podcast called Just Say No to the DSO.
I love it.
Okay. And a good friend of mine and I launched that a couple of years ago. He's a dental CPA, also like you and Kelly, has about 300 clients under his belt, and what, reviewed a lot of deals and has never found one that was a win-win for the dentist,
Mhm.
and continues to have deals pitched towards him and has still never found one that's a win-win for the dentist. And we decided, you know what, we've got to get out and start to educate the dental community about the nature of these structures, what's really happening behind the scenes, what they're all about, and how they're really only tilted in the direction of the corporate PE-backed,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
group. Okay.
You work throughout the country?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
And New Mexico just being, probably one of the least populous states. We had a little bit of DSO activity kind of coming in here and there, maybe
Hmm.
a little bit more right around that COVID period. There's a few that are
Right.
still here, but
Yeah.
Since rates, I went to a conference. It was 1 or 2 years ago. I think it was the Academy of Group Practice, Dental Group Practices, something
Okay.
like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there was a lot of talk around DSO activity, but it was more so about maybe the slowdown in
Hmm.
acquisitions because interest rates, one, got so high. I think
Yes.
people's expectations of what they think they should be getting also got out of whack. Um,
Hmm.
and then so many DSOs along the way got burnt on acquisitions. What does the current landscape look like from your perspective? What are you
Yeah.
seeing right now?
Eric, that's exactly right. What we're seeing is that there is this massive wave of free cash, essentially. Okay.
Mm.
Anything beneath 3% is like free
Right.
cash that was flooded post-COVID. Hence, money finds the places where it can get the highest returns. So these PE groups were flush and they just went on an acquisition binge on borrowed money in particular. Given that fact, yes, the increase in rates suddenly threw the whole market into a tailspin has also caused PE groups to suddenly realize that they have to now start to make money and not just spend money to be able to continue to survive.
Mhm.
So the whole thing has slowed, although interestingly, over this time frame, some of the surveys that I've sent out to independent dentists is about half of independent dentists throughout the country when the past 2 years have gotten offers from DSOs. So they're still really trying heavily to flood the market as much as they can,
Mhm.
but we've also seen the deal structure has changed a lot. Okay. How the deal structure has changed is now that money isn't free, what that means is that there's much less money off on the table
Mhm.
in a deal. Okay. And so think of it this, Eric and Kelly, it's kind of like that carnival clown with the balloons. I'm going to squeeze one in and the other end's going to get bigger. I'm going to try to shape it into something. Well, in the DSO landscape, since money is no longer free and they can't offer as much on the front side, then they squeeze the balloon and then poof, the equity on the back side
Yeah.
gets bigger and bigger. Okay. What happens to dentists, and I'll just share with you like the latest episode that we've had on Just Say No. There was an offer that we reviewed on the podcast of a dentist, successful dentist. I mean, 4 doctors working for him, and he himself was netting about 1.5 million a year. Okay, after everything was paid, and they came back and said, you know what, your practice is worth 36 million bucks.
Oh, wow.
Okay, 36 million bucks.
Yeah.
You
That's
know,
That is insane.
well, Kelly, it's absolutely insane. However, okay, what's even more insane is when you unpack this whole thing. Again, cash isn't free, so therefore, how do I squeeze a balloon? Well, I got to make it smaller here. I'm going to make it bigger here. So now I'm just going to give you 2.5 million up front.
Hmm.
Okay, and I'm going to now have you work 5 days a week instead of 4 days a week, and you're only going to get paid like an associate at 30%. And you've got these growth projections that you have to hit if you're going to keep your equity. All right.
Mhm.
Right.
But by the way, Mr. Doctor, if you do keep your equity, then we're forecasting all these recaps that eventually will reach $36 million. On a DSO, celebrity-based DSO from a very well-named, a known name in the industry, that they also presented the P&L for this celebrity DSO in this LOI. It's never made money, you guys, ever.
Mm.
Okay. And yet here's this incredible number. And here's what happens, and they know this. When the dentists see that number, they drop everything.
Yeah.
Okay. And suddenly it's like being seduced
Hmm.
at a party by the prettiest girl in the room. You've never had anybody like that pay attention to you get before in your life. And
Hmm.
all of a sudden, all your reason goes out the window.
Were you listening to me, Neo? Or were you looking at the woman in the red dress?
I was.
Look again. Freeze it.
Luckily, this dentist got a hold of my co-host and said, would you review this proposal? Here's the biggest kicker on this, Eric and Kelly. In the end, if you unpack the whole deal and really strip the equity away because it's just blue sky and it's all promises and rarely if ever does it come true, the guy would have ended up paying $2.5 million for the DSO to buy his practice.
Gee.
Okay, so that's what's happening today.
Yeah.
Is there's much less money now, there's much more equity on it, but there's also much bigger assumptions around growth and also restrictions around how you have to grow your practice itself to keep anything that we've given you. The other incestuous thing with this thing also is, guess what? The brokers that are leading this dentist to this type of deal, quote unquote, guess what they're getting their 10% commission
On the value, not the cash up front. So
That's exactly right. Yes.
yeah, I mean, because I'm doing the quick math on that. That's a 24 multiple on EBITDA, and it's brilliant because a
Yeah.
doc will invariably ask about, Eric, what are you seeing as the multiples on EBITDA? There's like,
Hmm.
I don't really
Hmm.
know anything other than I'm just going to throw multiples of EBITDA out there. But what you point out is it's not, yes, the multiple is critical, but it's also the terms.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I can buy your house tomorrow for $1 billion, and you're like, I'll take $1 billion, but I'm going to pay you
Sure.
$1 a year for $1 billion.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not so
Great
good
deal.
when I think about that
Hmm.
at that point.
Hmm.
And that's a lot of the problem as well, is people hear, well, I got an offer at 24 times EBITDA,
Hmm.
and then Kelly, Eric, get me 24 times EBITDA. For my
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
well, it never went through, but listen to the terms on that deal.
Hmm.
It's
And it's and,
horrible.
and
It may
it's
be worse.
horrible. Yeah. But once a dentist or doctor hears that number,
Yeah,
it's like all of a sudden, it's Men in Black, and suddenly, boom, the memory's gone, and they're
Right.
right,
just
right. Yeah,
okay
yeah.
because they're thinking generational wealth. I've hit the lottery. And holy cow, what can I do with that money? And I love one of the things that Nate Williams says, because one of the arguments that the brokers and DSOs use is, well, listen, doctor, we really want to make sure that you're taken care of in your retirement. So therefore, what we're going to do is we're going to give you this money, and then you go invest it in the market. Okay. And then you can self-fund all this stuff and look at all these great things that you can do in the end. One of the points Nate has made is, listen, if somebody says that they're going to give you money that you're going to go invest in the market, why don't you ask them why they're not doing that themselves?
Right.
Okay. And why are they so interested in your business and this exchange of value when they could do the market on their own and leave you alone? It's because they realize that your practice itself is highly valuable.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's why we're so passionate about this, you guys. And I wish that we were making this up. I
Yeah.
really do, because it used to be, and actually this deal that I shared with you was the worst deal we've ever seen. It typically, the numbers have shown us that if a doctor sold to DSO under the traditional means, which is more like 1/3 cash and the rest is equity, that if they just stayed in the practice and worked their normal, schedule, normal cash coming to them, in 5.5 years, they could burn their practice down and they'd be the same as if they sold. But today it's even worse than that.
Are you involved in transactions that are still going through to DSOs, and or are you seeing a mix of, doc to doc versus doc to DSO? Is there a percentage that you're seeing one way or the other? How heavily is it towards one versus the other?
Eric, that's a great question. Since I'm not a broker, I can't speak to it.
Okay.
I can just give you one data point, which I thought was fascinating. That I did a survey because I'm doing a presentation later on this week for Dr. Gordon Christensen and his clinician's report on the independent dentist. And so we surveyed about 1,000 dentists, 350 came back with answers, and we asked how many of you had offers, and of those, how many have actually accepted them. About 50% had offers in the past 2 years, and only less than 5% had said yes.
Hmm.
Okay. I don't know how really representative that is, but I think it's getting harder for them to get these deals to happen,
Mhm.
because people are kind of waking up on, dentists are waking up on, this really isn't what is being promised.
Right.
Okay. And as far as the real dentist to dentist deals are going, that is one thing that we try to manufacture, but more on a long-term 5-year transition side with dentist partner pros of finding that right person, bringing them on, onboarding them properly, getting them busy, and then beginning the structure of making that transition to happen gradually instead of immediately.
Mhm.
Okay. And we're seeing a lot of that happen.
And when you do that, when you looking for that partner, that associate, future partner to come in, is that associate typically coming right out of school, or they already been an associate elsewhere for a while?
Most of them, I'd say 99% have been out a while.
Okay.
They've been in a DSO.
Yeah.
Okay, we frankly love to get dentists from DSOs
Right.
that also, experience kind of the underhandedness of what's going on there,
Mhm.
and then realize, man, there's got to be a different way of doing this. Go ahead, please.
I was gonna say, I would have kind of anticipated your answer going that way. It seems like somebody who's interested and capable has already worked elsewhere to kind of see what's been working. They're mindful of, they've been taking mental notes. Maybe they've even been taking written notes of what I'm watching, what I'm observing, what I will do someday when I
Right,
own my own practice. It's really
right.
hard coming out of school. And I think the kids coming out of school are really gun shy because they still have so much student loan debt. Even though we can prove by buying a practice, you'll still be financially better off, but they
Right.
don't see that right away.
Yeah, they can't. They can't. There's honestly one dental school that I have pulled dentists out of, their D4 year and had them succeed in private practice, and that's Midwestern out of Glendale, Arizona. They're a cut above in terms of the experience that they give their students, the number of crowns they come out with, implants, what their whole clinic experience is like. But many of the others, honestly, they're not ready. And so that residency is really important. The AGD is important. And candidly, the time at a DSO can be important.
Mhm.
It's not where we want them to stay, but at least gives them the reps that they need to be able to gain confidence and competence.
When we've seen the deals that have failed, it's typically the transaction, the transfer of ownership from one party to the next. The
Mhm.
failures have been higher with that DSO as the buyer, as opposed to I guess your traditional buyer, another doc.
Yeah, a dentist to dentist sale.
Yeah,
Yeah,
dentist
a
to dentist.
private transaction. Yeah.
And these docs, it's usually a year later where I feel bad for them because
Mhm.
I had the feeling just when they talk to me about it is they're driving into that parking lot, the parking lot they've driven into for the last 25 to 30 years with, whether or not you're joy and glee going in, but it was yours to a year
Yeah. Yeah.
post-transaction where you're like, if I foot in this place one more day, I'm not quite sure I'll ever walk out of here again.
Mhm.
And then they leave that phantom equity that,
Exactly.
whatever that percentage was, whether or not it's 50 or 40% on the table because it just was never going to work for them. And it's a shame.
Exactly.
It's a
Yeah.
shame.
Yeah. It is. It is a shame. But what we've determined is that these pitches that are being made to doctors are designed to have them believe that they just won the lottery.
Mhm.
Okay. But in reality, when you unpack them and see all the lining in terms of, their growth assumptions, the requirements for growth, what you're going to have to do to maintain this phantom equity, the haircut they're giving you off of what you're earning today, et cetera,
Yeah.
you know, they're really designed to take your practice for nothing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
With this whole idea also, doctor, it'll be easier for you if you come and work with us. Here's the reality. Even if you sell to a DSO that may have dental knowledge, okay? I was talking to a good friend of mine last week who has another good friend, a dentist, who ran a DSO, and then they sold to another PE group, okay? The PE group has no one in it with any dental knowledge whatsoever.
Hmm.
So the Pac-Man strategy of, okay, we want to get recaps, so the bigger fish is going to swallow the smaller fish, and then it's going to just keep going. Somewhere down that line, you're going to find a PE group that knows nothing about dentistry. All they view you as numbers.
Mhm.
And that's not a good place to be if you happen to be the
Right.
former owner, okay?
Right.
Because you're going to have phone calls saying, how many crowns did you do today? All right. And you're going to have quotas and this and that. And it strips the heart out of dentistry, but it also will turn us into, if they succeed, something that really mirrors medicine. But
Yeah.
the difference, you guys, is this: medicine is forgive me for getting a little nerdy for a minute, what I call a pain-based model. Okay, we get procedures done because primarily we're in pain, and we'll do anything in American society today to get out of pain, right? Dentistry is not a pain-based model. If patients are in pain, we've waited too long.
Mhm.
So it's more what I call a hope-based model. It's a trust-based model of anticipation of trying to avoid pain by getting it done early. All right. But the difference in those two models make it to where there's a whole lot of gray that can happen in a dental practice because of this truth that I can present things to patients. They can say yes to them and they're not in pain, but they still trust and believe me. And so that can lead to a lot of abuses. If the person knocking on your head, if you're the doctor in that practice, is saying, Bob, I need 5 crowns today.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't care how you're going to get them, but I need them.
And that's a terrible way to have to go to work every day.
It is. Yeah. And that's why when I see DSOs purchase private practices, I mean, what's been your experience as far as how staff stays? What happens?
I think there's a high rate of turnover. It's depending upon where they are. In Albuquerque, people can leave. When you're in a more rural market, they may end up staying. But gee whiz, you're going to have a whole bunch of miserable people working for you.
Yeah,
Whole
and
team
eventually they
becomes miserable.
eventually they leave. In
Yeah,
metro areas, they're like lemmings off a ship. They just leave.
right.
Within
Yeah,
6 months, the whole
yeah,
staff is gone
yeah.
because of the reputation and also the reality.
I would just wonder on a going forward basis how much more successful these DSOs can be in terms of acquiring. Because you would think as we're having this conversation, the same
Hmm.
folks are probably having them on the inside and saying, I guess if the returns are still there, then they're going to continue. But I don't pay attention to what Heartland Dental is doing. I guess if I had all the time in the world and I could read whatever reports they may share, I'd maybe gather something from it. But because private equity is private, you just don't know what they're doing.
Right.
And I don't know if the returns are there. All I can tell you is that from our experiences, nobody's knocking on the door of practices in Albuquerque at the best we can tell at the
Hmm.
moment. But let me change gears a little bit and ask about group models. Is
Yeah,
that
yeah,
something?
please.
Yeah.
A group model, maybe if it goes on its way to be an emerging DSO, let's pretend we don't even go there, but
Sure,
let's say
sure.
it's a tiger by different stripes or whatever it is, leopard by different
Hmm.
prints. There's got to be some benefits to that group model mentality, isn't there? Wouldn't there be?
I think there is, Eric, and thank you for bringing that up. It's frankly not that I'm anti-corporation. Okay. The very fact that we can even talk today is everything we have around us is brought to us by a corporation.
Yes.
All right. Um, and synergy is a correct principle. And that's what corporations do is they allow the synergy and harnessing of energy and focus and resources to be able to produce really fantastic results. I mean, I've worked for some great corporations in my career before I became working for myself.
Mhm.
But yes, I think the group model has a lot of legs in this industry because there are economies of scale that can be gained.
Yeah.
And there are things that can happen cross-pollination wise, all
Right.
right? And also to create what we call on-ramps and off-ramps for ownership and partnership and other things. So there's a lot of value behind that. Where I have to draw the line for me personally is when it's private equity backed.
Mhm.
Okay,
Yeah.
because I understand the ultimate goal. And the ultimate goal is not patient care.
Yeah.
It's not to optimize dentist schedules and profitability and to help raise the level of care. It's to make money. And not that money is a bad thing. You know, money does a lot of great things. But if money is the reason, if it's the why, then it strips the heart out of everything. And in dentistry, you gotta play with a lot of heart because man, it's a hard industry to be a part of.
Yeah, and that's why I thought maybe we can have a different
Yeah.
podcast called "Just Say Yes to the Group Model,"
Yeah. Yeah.
because I mean you do get synergy, and I
You
think
do.
a handful of docs working together allows you to maybe have that floating dental assistant or the floating hygienist, or maybe not necessarily going. Of course, as an accountant, I'm thinking, okay, where
Sure.
is there cost cutting or
They
cost
call it
savings?
sharing. Yeah.
You may
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
need 3 office managers if you have three
You
practices.
don't.
Yeah,
No.
so maybe someday when one doc loses an office manager, instead of freaking out, the other alternative is buddy up with 3 other practices in town and figure out how to Now,
Hmm.
how you can do that? I mean, I think that joking aside, I think saying just say yes to the group model could be a way for these groups to survive going forward, have a little bit more buying power, have a little bit more influence, and, kind of set themselves up to be a defense against having to sell to a DSO.
Right.
Yeah.
I would not disagree with anything that you're saying. Okay. I think there is some great value in that. And I work with some groups, 3 or 4 practice locations. And what they do, dentist owned still, is fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it does provide options that as a solo doc, you really don't have.
And having that, I think the camaraderie, right? I mean, I just
Hmm.
see all these not all, a handful of our clients, they just privately message me and they're like, I don't know how much longer I can do this, and their
Yeah.
hygienists are leaving at a rate of one every 8 months because they're just chasing a higher rate because
Right.
maybe that
Right.
DSO is willing to pay a little bit more, and you just that defeat you feel all the time. If you
Yeah.
can collectively partner and build a little bit more strength, that may be a nice solution as well. Kelly, we need to get on that. That's going to be our podcast.
Yeah.
Just say
Yeah.
yes to the
I'd,
group model.
there you go. I think there is some real value to that. And you're right. As that solo independent dentist who's getting older, typically, you start to feel like you're on an island,
Yeah.
and it's really lonely.
Yeah.
Where if,
I'm
go
sorry.
ahead, please. No,
I was
go
going to
ahead.
say, because we use the analogy back to medical. When I started my career with PricewaterhouseCoopers, I was on the healthcare. I was in a healthcare audit and healthcare consulting team, and this is back in the 90s. Yeah,
Hmm.
I'm getting up there in age as well here. And back then, you still had a lot of these big groups that were privately owned groups managed by docs. It all went south
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
Ficor and Med Partners when they came in and
Right,
bought up
right.
everybody back then, and then the hospitals came in after that. But there was a period of time where those independent docs realized, I don't know how to bill Medicare the way I should be billing Medicare. And
No, no.
even if I did, I still don't even know how to follow up when the claim isn't paid on time. And I just want to be a doc. I want to
Right,
practice medicine. And
right.
our docs today, our dentists today are like, okay, maybe I've got the coding down right. I may not be following up correctly on accounts receivable. I may not have the best schedule. Maybe I don't know how to sell a treatment plan as better as the best I could. But if I partner with a couple of my buddies in town that are really good at these elements, maybe collectively we can all benefit from each other, learning from each other, and there gets us a little bit more of a synergy
Hmm. And share the load,
and share the
you
load.
know. And
Yeah.
if somebody has a natural penchant of those three, to use your hypothetical of marketing, man,
Yeah.
make them
Right.
that. I'm a big believer in a group model, what we call presiding doctor responsibilities. And you just take the administrative burden and you split it between the doctors. You may still have an office manager, but everybody kind of owns their piece of it, and then they
Yeah.
report back to the group. It makes it a whole lot more enjoyable for everybody. And I
Are
believe in the end, happy dentists lead to happy patients.
you have consulting client? You consult
I do.
dental
Yeah.
practices.
Yep.
Okay.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
are most of those practices sole practitioners, or what's the mix? What do you see if you look back in your database of clients?
Man, in my database of clients, I would say 80% were solo practitioners.
Sole practitioners. Okay, so a
Yeah.
good
Yeah.
chunk of that. Okay.
Yeah. And then
Okay.
another 20% were groups.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
But of those 80%, half were growing at a rate where they had to bring in a partner, okay, or at least an associate, partner quality associate to be able to continue to maintain their growth curve.
oh wow. Okay.
And that's where I developed kind of the specialty of how do we find the right person
Yeah.
and how do I make sure they're the right person so
Right.
that we can build this road, so to speak, so they can eventually become a partner.
Okay.
And how do we prevent the tragedies which happen, which are what we call dental divorces, of partnerships that break up, associates that leave, and everybody feels slimed because of it.
Do you want to address? Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. I mean, why do they happen?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's actually pretty simple when I boil it all down. Dentistry is such a unique environment in so many ways. One of the unique points of it, though, is it's unlike any other level of executive hiring out there. Okay, even different than medicine. Dentists are in each other's sandbox all day long. Okay, think of it like two executive cooks in the same kitchen. And if they don't get along really well, it combusts because they share the patient, they share the staff, they may share an office, they may share the same everything. So their values need to be in alignment with each other. Their personalities don't need to be identical, but they need to at least, fit together well. Okay, they need to view money in kind of a similar vein, and they have to both trust each other clinically and interpersonally. When that happens, it's magic. It's really, really cool when that happens. When it doesn't, wedges start to get stuck inside this relationship, and eventually those wedges will cause the relationship to fall apart. Resentment builds, communication doesn't happen, and then suddenly, disagreements occur. And if it's an owner-associate relationship, the associate is gone.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, this is with the assumption, Eric, that the practice is busy enough, they have enough patients, and that that the owner doctor isn't like stealing from the till, okay, and taking patients from the associate when the associate could actually treat that patient.
Sure.
But if it's on a human level, that's what takes place. So what we realized is, this is like a marriage. And if it's really like a marriage, then let's treat it like a marriage, okay? So become that person that knows who's going to fit in that practice, okay? Kind of like a matchmaker. And then put together a win-win offer so that resentment isn't going to creep in, and then set the associate up for success so that they've got an actual roadmap. And you're gonna laugh about this, but we actually do something we call marriage counseling calls. Okay, we do. Okay, yeah. After we bring an associate on, and if they sign up for this associate retention system of ours, we have calls with them monthly. And we just lovingly call them our marriage counseling call. Okay, what's working, what's not working, how you doing with your goals, and we even survey the team and get feedback from them as far as how they think things are going. Okay.
Are you interviewing each one of the partners separately or together when you do those calls?
Together, quarterly, we'll talk to them separately, but usually it's together. But we still survey. We survey the team, we survey the associate, we survey the doctor separately. So if there's something we need to talk about, in that call, we're aware of it.
Because I would imagine, obviously, people are going to be much more honest if they don't have to worry about hearing what other people
That's correct.
say.
Yeah.
They will. Yeah.
And sometimes in those marriage counseling sessions, are you able to rectify or rebuild a relationship, rather, if that's a better term? If you're starting to see, you use wedges, if there's maybe one or two wedges in there, are you able through the counseling to kind of remove those and rebuild that relationship?
Yeah, absolutely. We've seen it happen many times.
Yeah, sometimes it works.
Often it works. Okay.
Okay.
Often it works. I would say more than 80% of the time it's successful.
Oh, very good.
That's great.
Yeah, but it's because we found the right person in the first place, typically. Okay, 85% of the time we find somebody that stays longer than a year and eventually becomes a partner if that's the goal.
I think that service you offer is vital.
Yeah, I agree.
For that legacy of that doc.
Yeah,
Gee whiz, if a doc is 3 to 5 years out from retiring, rather than calling a broker at the 4.5 year mark and saying, I'm ready to sell it. Well, that may take 2 years. I mean, obviously, depending upon the location, it may go quick, it may not. But if you can bring somebody internally, I guess, provided the practice can handle that second doc.
That's correct.
Because you get that, it's like, okay, if it's a $1.2 million practice and we've got 5 chairs
on the line,
you can't ever have 2 docs in there full time.
Not very well.
Yeah.
So in those positions, because you're exactly right, I will ask the senior doctor, where are you on your retirement? And how important is it for you the next few years to be able to keep producing and collecting what you have been? Or is it possible to start to take more of a back seat, let this associate start to take over more, and are you still in good shape?
Right.
Okay. If they're in good shape, they usually can be flexible. Okay. But the thing that I try to prevent is like a conversation I had with a dentist a few weeks ago who said, I'm 69 years old. I'm ready to get rid of my practice or transition my practice. And I had a broker come to me and say, you know what? Don't tell your team anything. Okay. We're going to find a buyer. We're going to execute it. And then 2 weeks before you are out, you tell your team. And I looked at him and said, Doctor, how do you feel about that? He said, I feel horrible about it. This is my legacy, and I have nurtured this team for over 20 years, and they trust me. And now this guy is telling me, blow that trust completely out of the
Yeah.
water, take care of yourself, and let your team fend for themselves.
Yeah.
And I said, you know what, if I were you, I'd probably tell the broker, I think there's another route. And that's to go slow, find the right person, and then make this happen correctly and bring my team into the whole process.
Are you
And that's
seeing
what we
right
do.
now that there's a lot of associates out there that are placeable and that are?
Yeah, there are, Kelly. Absolutely. Yes.
And
Yeah.
what about in
And
our state? What about in New Mexico?
okay, New Mexico is tougher, to be honest with you guys, because you've got this wonderful residency program, but most of them leave.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right, they do. Yeah. So the talent pool in New Mexico is a little thin. Okay. And candidly, the state doesn't make it easier.
Yeah, not a
All
lot of
right.
people want to move here from somewhere else too.
Well, I love New Mexico. I serve part of a mission for the
Right.
Church of Jesus Christ of Latter Saints in New Mexico. I love it. Okay.
Mhm.
But the gross receipts tax that they have is really tough for one thing. Okay. And then I know that they are also like raising the minimum wage and different things.
Mhm.
So the state itself makes it really hard for professionals to want to come in because they feel disadvantaged to start with. If you're from New Mexico, you get it and you love it, and there's no place else you'd ever live. But if you're not, it can seem a little bit difficult. Okay.
Yeah, the good thing is that a lot of the gross receipts tax issues are going have been whittled away over the years. So there's one
That's great.
positive there. So if you know
Maybe it's just a lack of understanding.
we do have other issues.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
And I
do.
think most states are getting very worker friendly as well. So unfortunately, where New Mexico tends to be progressive is in those areas. But we come here for the sunshine, right?
Oh, the sunshine, the green chili, and the people. Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I know.
no traffic. So you have that we have that going for us.
You do. And the sunsets.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely beautiful.
Man, the sunsets out of Albuquerque, oh,
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
remarkable. Yeah.
Bob, I know we're coming up towards the hour
Yeah.
here, and I
Yeah.
want to be respectful of your time. And gee whiz, I've got a whole bunch of other questions that
I know. We need to do this again. Okay. This is really
yeah.
fun. You know.
I'm going to challenge Kelly and Josh to come back and let's do our just say yes to the group model.
He already challenged us to get you on our podcast, and we got you.
Oh,
Yeah, we
cool.
might have to tweak that name a little bit.
Man, I need to play hard to get.
No, we absolutely love this. We love talking about this stuff.
Yeah.
It gives us a lot of knowledge and helps us with our clients and and helping them make make decisions and
Yeah.
I would say, Bob, maybe on the way out on this phone call. I mean, this is kind of a great get to know each other, have some more experience. But I mean, certainly we want to make sure folks who are listening want to be able to get through to you can. But as we wrap up this one, and I hope we can do part two, part three, part
Yeah.
four,
Yeah.
whenever it is like maybe today. Are there any are we trying to reach a certain doc today? And in my mind, it's the one who's let's just pretend for today's conversation is the doc that is contemplating a sale. And maybe they're contemplating a year from now, 2 years from now. What would be some of the advice you'd want to give that person today to be thinking about?
Great question. And the first piece of advice I'd give is to actually start with the question, how important is it to you to maintain the legacy of your practice? All right, because that question alone then dictates the path you're going to take. If you know and are educated to understand that it is possible to transition and maintain the legacy instead of follow the old traditional model Find a buyer, like I talked about this guy, find a buyer, tell your team and walk away. Okay. If legacy is important, and our surveys have shown legacy is important to about 90% of the doctors that are out there that are thinking of transitioning in the next 3 to 5 years, then they should really take the approach of how can I create a model that will allow me to bring somebody on, tee them up for success, and allow them to then take over the reins. Because it's possible. Okay. It's not only possible, it's doable. And what that allows the retiring doctor to do, candidly, is walk away feeling really fulfilled over the amount of time that they have invested in this practice, which in many ways has become their family, their second family, and also their primary identity. And to walk away looking themselves in the mirror and saying, you know what? I gave that practice everything that I had in my heart to give. And now I know it's in great hands and I can go off with pride, with my head held high, and know that it's going to continue.
And that's wonderful, and I think that's so important. And then I'm going to ask, as a CPA, always thinking about the numbers, legacy is important. But if I then talk to the doc about maybe where are you from a financial perspective, legacy is important, but also somewhere that financial element of a sale must also become important, right?
Well, and forgive me for being unclear about that. I mean, the
You're
sale
not,
itself is part of the whole deal.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Assuming that you can construct a win-win deal.
yeah,
All right.
yeah.
It's interesting, and I know we're trying to wrap up, but let me just make one more
Sure.
observation. Given these outlandish valuations that
Right.
DSOs have assigned to practices,
Yeah.
okay, what it's actually caused is the whole valuation model has risen. All right. And you're seeing solo practices that are being appraised for 100, 110% of 3-year average collections.
Wow.
You know,
We've kind
Yeah.
of seen that here with a couple.
yeah. And I look at that because I've got an MBA and I'm looking at those numbers and saying, how does that buying doctor ever get out from underneath that?
They
You,
don't.
you can't.
Yeah.
Okay. But can you find a reasonable number that's more closer to the traditional, 70, 75, 80, that gives them the headroom to be able to actually make those payments and not feel like you're suddenly practice poor.
Right.
Okay. But yes, that is part of the deal. You want to sell it because you want that buying owner, that transitioning doctor to actually value everything you've done because not only have you passed it on to them, but they have skin in the game. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I
it's part of
don't,
the whole package.
did you know Norton Henley? Did
I
you know that
didn't.
name?
No.
So, and
No.
Norton
He
Henley was
says a lot of things like him, huh?
Yeah, and so Norton Henley would have been my partner had he not passed away a few years ago
Okay.
on
Yeah.
the valuation side of things. And when Norton did his valuations back then, and we still do this as well, we have a reasonability model in there to make
Oh,
sure
I love that. Yes.
the doc buying has a sufficient compensation, is able to pay back debt, is able to pay taxes, and then there's wiggle room thereafter. If there's
Right.
either a loss of business, but actually there should be just some nominal profit left after all that. And so, that's such a critical part of what we do in our valuation is to make sure that may, so, when you talk about like 110% of revenues versus 70 to 80,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's music to my ear going, okay, it's like, yeah, we have to be in something that's reasonable because at
We do.
110%, the kid buying the practice is going to be eating pizza and ramen noodles
Yeah.
for the next
Yeah.
10 years
Yeah.
because he can't make his salary
No.
for himself.
No, not at all. Nope. He's going to be the last person in line.
Yeah.
So yeah,
And
it's
the
really
banks will
important. I
lend
love
on
that.
that too.
They will,
And that's what
exactly.
pisses me off. The banks don't care. I
Nope, the
mean,
banks do not care.
nobody's
No.
sponsoring this. None of the banks are, so I can say that.
Yeah.
I have to
Yep.
be careful
Yeah.
otherwise, but until we get a bank sponsor, we can honestly say the bank, if it'll cash flow, they'll figure out, they'll back
I
into
know they
what their
will.
purchase price
Yeah,
could
they
be and
will.
say, yeah, we can lend on this deal.
Yeah, but he's going to be eating ramen noodles for 10
That's
years.
right.
But big deal. We won't be. He will be.
We know
Right.
we know most dentists will pay that debt. You're good for it, and we don't care
Hmm.
what you do for the next 10 years other than pay us back.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
I love it. I love it.
on that
Yeah.
note, I really appreciate your time to meet with us, and I do think we need to continue moving along with additional podcasts with you, additional episodes, Bob. Thank you for your
Yeah.
time.
That'd be really fun. Okay. Thank you.
Go ahead and
Sure.
tell us how can folks learn
Uh,
more about you?
yeah. Great question. Probably the best place to do it is just to go to spielconsulting.com. SPIEL consulting all one word.com, and there's a little contact us button. I get that, and I'll reach out immediately. And if it has to do with transitions or associate, hire, I'll send that immediately to my team at Dentist Partner Pros. They'll get in touch with you.
Perfect.
Okay.
Well,
Yeah.
Bob, thank you so much for your time this afternoon.
Yeah,
Really.
thank you
This was
so
fun.
much.
So much.
Thank you too. Yeah, very, very fun. And
Thanks, guys.
it's exciting that we're working with Desert Hills together.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
And glad to know that we're on the same page
absolutely.
about
Yeah,
this. Yeah.
I
Cool.
look forward to working with you in particular with them. So I'm
Yeah, great.
excited about that. Thanks, Bob.
Okay. Thanks a ton. You bet. All
Thanks,
right. Okay.
Bob.
You're
Bye.
welcome. All right.
All
Bye-bye.
right. Bye.